Hey YouTube, Captain Marc here from King's Landing Sport Fishing. Recently I've been doing a bunch of videos on my rod setups on the boat, and also did a question and answer session a few weeks ago on Facebook streaming live. And I mentioned a setup I use where I use 19 strand Torpedo wire as a backer with either a 50-foot section of weighted steel or a two-color Leadcore. So today I want to actually talk a little bit about this because I had some requests after that particular video or that Facebook live session to explain how I put this together. Before I do that though, if I can ask you to like and subscribe to my channel, that'd be fantastic, as it helps me a great deal as an amateur YouTube content. So now let's get in and I'll talk about what I use for this particular setup. So for this setup, the rod I'm using is a Streamside Predator. It's their TSD 862. It is their Leadcore copper rod. I use this in all of my Leadcore copper setups. And because I'm using this with 19 strand wire as a backer, I don't need a huge reel. So because it's also got my short cores or my short steels on it. So I'm using a Dakota 600 LC. And I've put, to start off, I've got about 750 feet of Torpedo 19 strand weighted steel. And then I've got a small section of braid. I've got my, in this case, two color. And then another small section of braid and some fluorocarbon. But I'm going to show you how I put this together, not with this rod because I've got this rod all put together. But what you can see here in front of me is I've got another spool. And this spool actually I've unwound the full setup just to kind of show you and explain what knots I use. So what you'll see here on the camera is this right here is the Torpedo 19 strand wire. And then I've got 85 feet of green braid here. I just have a large spool of 85 feet braid, so that's what I'm using. And I've tied the two together with an Albright knot. It's a really, really tight knot. It's an excellent knot when you're tying braid to wire, and that's what I've used here. And then when I've got this section of braid here, this is actually about a 20-foot section. The reason being is these are typically my short cores, as I mentioned, and therefore I'm going to be able to. I'm running a two-color, three-color, or a 50-foot weighted steel section. So there's many cases where I may just want to actually run the short core on its own, and therefore I clip my planer board right into this braided section. So from there, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wind some of this line onto the reel, and I'm going to show you the next connection. So bear with me as I do that. Now I wound the braid on, and I get to the section where I'm connecting my weighted steel to the braid. So I'm using the exact same knot. So there's my 20-foot section of 85-pound braid, an Albright knot connected to weighted steel. And in this particular case, I'm running a 50-foot section of weighted steel that on its own will sink 10 feet. But the benefit of this is the 19 strand backer, when combined with either Leadcore or weighted steel, it will continue to sink at the same rate as that Leadcore or that weighted steel because it's so narrow and cuts through the water. So that works, it works extremely well, and it allows you to basically use a short core as if it's a long core and let out as much as you want to have that, that line continue to sink down. So bear with me, I'm going to wind in the weighted steel here and then show you the connection on the other end. Okay, so I've wound the 50-foot section of weighted steel onto the reel here, and I've got to really the final two connections. And what I've got here is I've got a connection that is my weighted steel right here to braid, and similarly same Albright knot to connect those two. And then this section of braid is about 18 inches. It's not a long section. And then what I've done is I've got that connecting from my braid to my fluorocarbon. In this particular case, it's 20-pound fluorocarbon. And what I've done here is I've used a double uni knot to connect the braid to the fluorocarbon. And then whatever length of fluorocarbon you like when you're putting together your lead cores or coppers. I think in this particular case, I've got a 25 or 30-foot section. And then what I'll do is I will finish this off with a Torpedo number 2 snap swivel, because I'm typically using this setup with a small spoon, either spring fishing, or I'll take these out with me when I'm going fishing in the blue zone, and I'll to fish for coho and steelhead up in the top 35-40 feet. So that's why I really like this particular setup. So just to review why 19 strand works well as a backer for your short cores. So when you're running a short core rod, typically it's going to be a 2-color or a 3-color, maybe a 4-color, or it's going to be, you know, a 50 or 75 foot weighted steel. And those are great short cores, and they'll typically get you down, whether it be that 10, 15 feet on their own. But by putting the 19 strand behind it, the 19 strand, it's so thin and cuts through the water so well. It essentially takes on the dive curve of whatever you've got in front of it, so that weighted steel or that lead core. So, you know, let's say I want to actually mimic a 200 weighted steel. All I'm going to do is, and that's why I'm using a line counter reel here, is all I'm going to do is once I get to my weighted steel, I'm going to zero my counter. I'm then going to let out the 50 feet of weighted steel, but I'm then going to also let out 150 feet of the 19 strand backer. And that is essentially letting out 200 feet. That 200 feet is essentially going to mimic a 200 foot weighted steel, because it's going to just keep cutting through the water. It's a great setup. It makes these rods really, really versatile, that I can use them in the spring, but I can also take them out when I'm fishing in the blue zone, looking for steelhead and cohos, or I can use them when I'm fishing for salmon and want to, you know, mimic a 200 or a 250 or a 300 off one of my off my big boards or off my inline boards. So that's the setup I use, and how I terminate it with the Albright knots and the braid sections in between. Give it a try. It will put more fish in the boat. It's a great setup, but it also allows you to cut down on some of the rods that you're carrying on the boat. And for those folks that asked me to put this video together, thank you for the feedback. The feedback is great. As an amateur YouTube content producer, I am looking for your feedback and videos that you'd like me to put together, as I'd love to bring those to you. And if you do like my videos and channel, please don't forget to click on the like button and the subscribe button. It means a great deal to me. Thank you very much, and good luck on the water in 2021, and have a great day.